Welcome back, my friend. Tonight we travel across a vast and restless sea of grass where the wind never truly sleeps and the horizon seems to stretch forever. You find yourself beneath an immense sky, pale blue by day and scattered with cold stars by night. The air carries the scent of dry earth and distant smoke, and somewhere far away hooves press rhythm into the land, This is the Mongol steppe, a place that feels both empty and alive, where survival is never guaranteed, and every life must be carved from hardship. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as you settle in, perhaps wrapped in blankets or resting your head softly, I invite you to share your location and local time in the comments. There is something quietly beautiful about knowing where in the world this story finds you. Now dim the lights. For a moment it feels as though the wind itself is guiding you, carrying you gently into a time long before cities rose. In steel and glass, you move among scattered camps round tents stitched from felt, their surfaces glowing faintly in firelight. Horses graze nearby, their breath visible in the chill. Life here is simple, but never easy. Every day is shaped by movement, by weather, by the constant need to endure. In this wide and unforgiving land, a child is born. His name is Temujin. You do not hear celebration in the way you might expect. Instead, there is a quiet, cautious joy, as if even happiness must tread lightly here. His mother cradles him close, her hands worn but steady. His father, a minor tribal leader, looks on with guarded pride, already aware that the steppe offers no guarantees, not even to the sons of chiefs. The night air is cold, very cold. Your mind drifts closer, as if you are seated just outside the family's shelter, listening to the low murmur of voices and the soft crackle of fire. The stars above seem impossibly sharp, like scattered fragments of ice. In this world, stories are not written in books. They are carried in memory, passed from voice to voice, shaped by wind and time. Records confirm, as noted by historians at Harvard University, that Temujin was likely born around the year 1162 into a landscape dominated by rival clans and fragile alliances. These groups lived in constant tension, bound by kinship, but divided by ambition. Yet here in this quiet moment, none of that seems to matter. He is simply a child wrapped in warmth against the endless cold. Still, even now, there is something about him. Not something obvious, nothing grand or glowing, just a presence, a stillness, as if the storm has not yet arrived, but is already gathering beyond the hills. You notice the rhythm of life around him. Horses are everything here. They are food, transport, wealth, and survival itself. Even as an infant, Temujin is surrounded by their movement, their warmth, their quiet strength. The ground beneath you feels firm, yet alive with unseen motion, as if the entire steppe breathes in slow, steady pulses. Oddly enough, one curious historical note suggests that children of the steppe were introduced to riding almost as soon as they could walk, their balance shaped early by necessity. You can almost picture it already, though the child before you is still so small, his future hidden beneath layers of time. The fire flickers. You hear laughter now, low and brief, carried away almost as quickly as it forms. Life here does not allow for long indulgence in comfort. Even joy must remain alert, ready to vanish at the first sign of danger. And danger is never far. Scholars continue to debate the precise conditions of Temujin's early family status. Some argue, as suggested in research discussed at the University of Cambridge, that his father held modest authority among the Borjigin clan, while others believe his influence was more fragile, dependent on shifting loyalties rather than firm power. No agreement has been reached, and perhaps it does not truly matter. On the steppe, her power is never permanent. What matters is this. He is born into uncertainty. The wind shifts direction, brushing against your skin with a sharper edge. You pull whatever warmth you can around yourself instinctively, mirroring the people here who have learned to read every subtle change in air and light. Survival is not taught in lessons. It is absorbed moment by moment. Inside the shelter, Temujin stirs. His small hand moves slightly, fingers curling as if grasping something unseen. You watch this tiny gesture, strangely aware that history often begins not with grand events, but with moments so quiet they almost pass unnoticed. There is no sign yet of conquest, no hint of empire, only a child breathing softly. And yet as you sit here, listening to the distant sounds of the steppe, you cannot help but feel that something vast is already in motion. The land itself seems to hold its breath, as if it recognizes a story that has not yet been told. The fire dims slightly, embers glowing a deep orange. Shadows stretch and fold along the curved walls of the shelter. Outside, the horses shift their hooves, pressing gentle patterns into the earth. The sky remains wide, indifferent, eternal. You feel time slowing, or perhaps it is simply that this place exists outside the rush of everything you know. Here there are no clocks, no schedules, no fixed boundaries, only cycles. Day into night, summer into winter, life into death and back again. Temujin sleeps, and the world waits. The wind returns before dawn, colder now, carrying a thin edge that brushes against your face and wakes you gently. The camp stirs in fragments, not all at once, but in quiet layers of movement. A horse snorts, a leather strap creaks, somewhere a child coughs softly, then settles again. You remain close to the same family, watching as time begins to move forward slowly at first. Then with gathering force. Temujin is no longer an infant. He sits beside the fire, small but alert, his dark eyes reflecting the shifting light. His mother works nearby, her hands moving with practiced rhythm as she prepares food from what little they have. His father stands at a distance, speaking with other men, their voices low and serious. Even without understanding every word, you can sense the tension woven into their exchange. Life here has rules, though none are written. Your attention drifts to the boy again. He watches everything. The movement of hands, the tone of voices, the behavior of animals. Nothing escapes him. It is not curiosity in the playful sense, but something sharper, something more necessary. A distant hawk circles overhead. You feel it before you fully understand it. Change is coming. Records confirm, as discussed in research from the University of Chicago, that alliances among steppe tribes were often sealed through marriage or temporary loyalty, yet could unravel with startling speed. Trust in this world is rarely permanent. It is negotiated, tested, and often broken. And now that fragile balance begins to tilt, Temujin's father sets out on a journey. You watch as he prepares his horse, tightening straps with deliberate care. His expression is calm, but there is a heaviness beneath it, as if he senses the uncertainty ahead. He rides away with a small group, their figures growing smaller against the endless land until they are swallowed by distance. The boy watches him go. He does not wave. Time stretches. Days pass in a rhythm of waiting, though no one speaks of it openly. The camp continues its routines, but something feels slightly off, like a note in a song that does not quite settle. The wind carries whispers, though their meaning remains just beyond reach. Then one evening, riders appear on the horizon. Your breath slows as they approach. There is no urgency in their movement, no triumphant return. Just a steady, quiet advance that feels heavier with every step closer. The camp gathers not in panic, but in a tense stillness. Temujin stands beside his mother. The riders stop. And then without ceremony the truth arrives. His father is dead. The words are not shouted. They are spoken plainly, almost gently, as if trying to soften something that cannot be softened. Poison, they say, given during what should have been a gesture of hospitality, a betrayal wrapped in politeness. The fire crackles, no one moves. You feel the weight of it settle over everything. The sky above remains unchanged, vast and indifferent, yet the world beneath it has shifted completely. Temujin does not cry. Not here, not now. His mother's face tightens her strength, hardening into something unyielding. Around them, the tribe reacts not with unity, but with calculation. Without the father's leadership, the family's position weakens instantly. Loyalty fades, protection dissolves, and then quietly they are abandoned. You watch as people begin to leave, not all at once, but in a steady, undeniable flow. Families gather their belongings, mount their horses, and ride away without looking back. No confrontation, no farewell, just absence spreading like a slow shadow. It happens so quickly. One moment they are part of a tribe, the next they are alone. Scholars often argue over the exact motivations behind this abandonment. Some referencing discussions from Yale University suggest it was a pragmatic decision driven by survival instincts in a harsh environment. Others believe deeper rivalries played a role, old tensions surfacing once authority disappeared. The truth, like much of steppe history, remains uncertain, carried away by time and silence. What remains is this: a mother and her children left to fend for themselves. The camp grows quieter with each departure. The sounds of hooves fade into distance until only the wind remains whispering through empty space. You feel the loneliness settle in, not loud or dramatic, but heavy and persistent. Temujin stands still, very still. His world has been stripped down to its barest form. No tribe, no protection, no certainty. Only the land, the sky, and the fragile thread of family that remains. Oddly enough, one lesser-known detail from historical accounts suggests that such abandonments were not uncommon on the steppe, where survival often outweighed loyalty. It does not make the moment easier to witness, but it places it within a broader pattern, one shaped by necessity rather than cruelty alone. The boy turns his gaze outward, not toward the departing riders, but toward the horizon itself, as if searching for something beyond what has been lost. There is no panic in him, no visible fear, just a quiet, growing intensity. You feel it again, that same stillness from his birth, now sharper, more defined. The fire burns lower. Night begins to fall, wrapping the small remaining family in shadow. The temperature drops quickly, the cold pressing in from all sides. You pull closer, instinctively seeking warmth, mirroring their movements as they gather what little they have. No one speaks for a while. There are no words that can undo what has happened. Instead, there is action, small deliberate steps towards survival. Food must be found, shelter must be secured, life must continue even when everything else has fallen away. The stars appear one by one. Temujin looks up at them, and for a brief moment you wonder what he sees. Not just the distant lights, but the possibilities they might represent. Or perhaps nothing at all. Perhaps he simply sees what is there without illusion. Either way, something within him has changed. The boy who once sat beside a fire under his father's watch now stands at the edge of a far harsher world, one where strength is not inherited but forged. And the forging has begun. Morning arrives without warmth. The light spreads slowly across the steppe, pale and thin, revealing a world that feels larger now and far less forgiving. You notice how the camp, once alive with movement and quiet noise, has become almost skeletal. Fewer tents, fewer voices, more space between everything, as if absence itself has taken form. Temujin moves through this new silence with careful steps. He is still a child, but something in his posture has shifted. There is less wandering now, less idle watching. Each movement carries purpose, even if that purpose is not yet fully formed. His mother calls to him, her voice firm, but not unkind, and he responds immediately. There is no hesitation. Hunger has a way of sharpening obedience. You feel it too, though, only faintly, like a distant echo. The kind of hunger that lingers, not dramatic but constant. It sits quietly in the background, shaping every decision, every thought. Food is no longer routine. It is uncertain, unpredictable, sometimes absent altogether. The family gathers what they can. Roots pulled from stubborn soil, small animals trapped with patience and luck. Whatever the land is willing to offer, they take, knowing it may not offer the same tomorrow. The work is relentless, and yet there is no complaint, only necessity. Your fingers brush against rough wood. It is cold. Records confirm, according to studies referenced by Stanford University, that families cast out from tribal protection on the Mongol steppe faced extreme survival challenges, often relying on foraging and hunting rather than the relative stability of herd-based wealth. Without horses in abundance or allies nearby, their position becomes dangerously fragile. And here, you see that fragility unfold in real time. Temujin learns quickly, too quickly perhaps. He watches how his mother sets traps, how she reads the land, how she listens for subtle changes in wind and sound. He mimics her movements, not perfectly at first, but with growing precision. There is no room for prolonged childhood here, no space for innocence to linger. The step does not wait. A short pause settles, just long enough to feel the weight of it. Days blur into one another, marked not by calendars, but by survival itself. You begin to notice small patterns. The way the family rises before the sun, the way they conserve energy, speaking only when necessary, the way even rest feels cautious, as if danger might arrive without warning. And sometimes it does. One afternoon, as the light begins to soften, a distant group appears on the horizon. You feel the tension immediately. The family notices too. Movements slow, voices drop, eyes narrow. Strangers are never neutral here. They could be traders, or rivals, or something far worse. The group passes without stopping. Relief comes quietly, like a breath released after being held too long. No celebration follows, just a subtle easing of shoulders, a return to motion. On the step, survival often means avoiding notice as much as seeking opportunity. Scholars continue to debate how formative these early years were in shaping Temujin's later leadership style. Some researchers, including those discussed in work from Columbia University, argue that his harsh upbringing directly influenced his emphasis on loyalty and merit over noble birth. Others suggest that such interpretations risk oversimplifying a far more complex evolution. The arguments remain unresolved, drifting like dust across the academic landscape. Still, as you watch him now, it is difficult not to see the connection. He is learning what it means to rely on no one, and what it costs. Oddly enough, one curious detail noted by historians is that children in such conditions often developed exceptional endurance, both physical and mental, far beyond what would be expected at their age. You see that endurance forming here, not as something dramatic, but as a steady, quiet resilience. The nights are the hardest. Cold seeps into everything, even the smallest gaps in clothing and shelter. The fire becomes a lifeline, its warmth fragile but essential. You sit close, feeling the heat against your skin, while the air behind you remains sharp and unforgiving. Temujin sits across from you. He says nothing, but his eyes reflect the flames steady and unblinking. You wonder what thoughts pass through his mind, if any, or if survival has narrowed his focus so completely that there is only the present moment stretching endlessly forward. The wind hums softly, a low constant sound. It almost feels like a voice. Another short silence settles, not uncomfortable, but heavy with meaning. The family sleeps in shifts. Always someone awake. Always someone listening. You begin to understand that safety here is not a condition, but a brief illusion. Something that appears then disappears without warning. And yet within this uncertainty, a kind of strength begins to take root. Temujin rises before dawn. He steps outside the shelter, the ground firm beneath his feet. Frost clings lightly to the grass, catching the first hints of light. He looks out across the open land, his gaze steady, his expression unreadable. For a moment, it feels as though the entire steppe is watching him in return. No sound, no movement, just stillness. Then slowly the world begins again. The wind shifts, the horses stir. The faint rhythm of life resumes its quiet pulse. And you remain there beside him, aware that this struggle, this relentless shaping of body and mind is not an ending. It is a beginning, a hard one, a necessary one, and far from over. The rhythm of survival settles into something almost predictable, though never comfortable. You begin to recognize the subtle patterns that shape each day, the careful balance between effort and restraint, between risk and caution. Temujin moves within this rhythm, now no longer reacting, but anticipating. The wind feels softer today. Not warm, but less harsh, as if the steppe itself allows a brief moment of ease. You notice how even this small shift changes everything. Shoulders relax slightly. Movements become a touch less rigid. The tension does not disappear, but it loosens its grip. Temujin walks farther from camp than before. Not recklessly, just far enough to see more, to learn more. You follow at a distance, watching how he studies the land. Every hill, every patch of grass, every faint track pressed into the soil. His attention is quiet but intense, like someone assembling a map that exists only in memory. And then he is not alone. Another boy appears across the open space, approaching with cautious steps. He is close in age, perhaps slightly older. His posture guarded but curious. For a moment neither speaks. The distance between them holds a kind of fragile tension. You feel it immediately. This could become anything. A threat, a rivalry, or something else entirely. They circle slightly, not in hostility, but in assessment. Eyes meet, then shift away, then return again. It is a silent negotiation, shaped by instinct more than words. Finally, a few simple phrases are exchanged, brief and careful. The tension softens, not gone but changed. Your mind drifts closer to them, noticing the small details. The way Temujin's shoulders remain steady, neither aggressive nor submissive. The way the other boy mirrors him, as if both are searching for balance rather than dominance. A friendship begins here, quietly, without ceremony. Records confirm, as noted in research discussed by Princeton University, that early alliances among steppe youths often formed the foundation of later political and military bonds. These relationships built in youth could evolve into powerful partnerships or bitter rivalries. And here in this simple meeting, you sense the early shape of both possibilities. They begin to spend time together. At first, it is practical, sharing knowledge of the land, exchanging small skills, testing one another in subtle ways, but gradually something deeper forms. Trust, fragile but real, begins to grow. You notice how Temujin changes in these moments. There is still intensity in him, still that quiet focus shaped by hardship. But now there is also something lighter, something almost resembling ease, a brief return to something like childhood, though it never fully settles. They laugh once, just once. It is quick, almost surprising, as if neither expected it. The sound carries lightly across the steppe, then fades, leaving behind a sense of something newly possible. Short, fleeting, real. Oddly enough, one lesser-known historical note suggests that such early bonds among steppe youths were often tested through games that mirrored real survival skills, including wrestling, riding, and mock combat. These were not merely pastimes, but early training shaping both body and trust. You can almost see those elements here, even in their simplest interactions. But not all moments remain easy. One afternoon, the air feels different again, heavier. The sky holds a dull grey tone, and the wind carries a sharper edge. You sense the shift before anything happens, the way animals grow restless, the way silence deepens. The two boys stand facing each other. This time the space between them feels tighter. A disagreement small at first begins to take shape. Words are exchanged, sharper now, less cautious. You cannot hear every detail, but the tone is clear. Pride has entered the space, pressing against the fragile trust they have built. Neither steps back. The tension rises, slowly. Then suddenly, they clash. It is not a full fight, not yet, but a test of strength of will. Hands push bodies, strain, feet dig into the earth. You feel the energy shift from connection to conflict, the balance tipping in real time. It ends quickly, too quickly to resolve anything. They separate, breathing, hard eyes still locked. The silence that follows feels heavier than the struggle itself. Scholars often disagree on how to interpret such early conflicts. Some, referencing discussions from the University of Oxford, suggest that rivalry was an inevitable part of steppe relationships, where strength and dominance were constantly negotiated. Others argue that these tensions reveal deeper insecurities, shaped by unstable environments and uncertain futures. The debate continues, with no clear resolution. What remains is this moment, a bond tested, not broken, not yet. The boys step away from each other, each carrying something unspoken. The connection between them has changed, no longer simple, no longer entirely safe. And yet it has not disappeared. You watch as Temujin turns back toward his camp. His expression is calm again, but different from before. There is a new awareness in him, a recognition that even trust can shift, that even allies can become uncertain. The wind rises slightly, not violent but insistent, as if reminding you that nothing on this steppe remains still for long. And somewhere within that shifting balance, the seeds of future loyalty and future conflict have both been planted. The days lengthen, and with them the paths you follow seem to stretch farther across the open land. The steppe feels less empty now, not because it has changed, but because you've begun to understand its quiet language. The wind speaks in patterns. The grass bends with intention. Even silence carries meaning. Temujin moves with growing confidence. You notice it in the way he handles small tasks, the way his hands no longer hesitate when tying a knot or setting a trap. His steps are firmer, more certain. Survival is no longer something he reacts to, it is something he anticipates. And then something unexpected enters this fragile stability. A union. You arrive at a gathering, unlike the quiet isolation you have grown used to. There are more people here, more movement, more voices layered together in a low, steady hum. The scent of cooked meat drifts through the air, richer than anything you have sensed in days. For a moment, it almost feels like abundance. Temujin stands beside a young girl. Her presence is calm, steady, her expression composed in a way that feels older than her years. This is Borta, and though the moment is not filled with grand declarations, it carries weight. Their marriage is arranged, a bond formed not only between two individuals, but between families, between futures. You sense the quiet significance of it. Records confirm, as discussed in research from Yale University, that marriages among steppe tribes often served as strategic alliances, strengthening ties and securing mutual support. Yet within these arrangements, personal relationships could still grow, shaped by shared experience, rather than choice alone. Temujin and Borte sit near one another. There is little conversation at first, just presence. The firelight reflects softly across their faces, and you notice how neither seems entirely at ease. Yet neither withdraws. It is a beginning uncertain but real, like so many things on this step. For a brief time, life steadies. The days that follow carry a different rhythm, one that includes companionship. You notice how Borte adapts quickly, her movements efficient, her awareness sharp. She is not passive. She observes, learns, and contributes. The small family unit feels stronger, more balanced. There is a sense of fragile hope. It lingers quietly, then without warning it shatters. The night is unusually still when it happens. The air feels thick, as if holding something just out of sight. You sense the danger before it fully arrives, a subtle shift that tightens your chest. Hooves. Fast. Too fast. Figures emerge from the darkness, their movements swift and coordinated. There is no time for negotiation, no space for hesitation. The camp erupts into motion confusion, spreading in sharp bursts of sound and movement. Temujin reaches for Borte, but the moment slips. She is taken. The attackers vanish as quickly as they came, carrying her into the vast darkness beyond the fire's reach. The silence that follows is not calm. It is hollow, stunned, as if the world itself has paused to absorb what has just occurred. Everything changes again. Your breath slows, mirroring the heavy stillness that settles over the camp. Temujin stands frozen for a brief moment, his hand still extended toward where she had been. The fire flickers, casting uneven shadows across his face. Then something hardens. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a shift, a decision. Scholars continue to debate the precise motivations behind the raid. Some, referencing discussions from the University of Cambridge, suggest it was part of an ongoing cycle of revenge and retribution among steppe tribes. Others argue it may have been opportunistic targeting, a vulnerable group with limited protection. No agreement has been reached, and the truth remains scattered across fragmented accounts. What is certain is this: he will not let this stand. You feel it in the way he moves, now no longer cautious, no longer merely surviving. There is purpose in every step, urgency in every glance. The boy shaped by hardship is beginning to transform into something more focused, more driven. He seeks allies. The same land that once isolated him now becomes a network of possibility. He travels across it with determination, approaching those he once knew, those he once trusted, even those he once clashed with. Each interaction carries risk, but also potential. Your mind drifts to that earlier friendship, the fragile bond, tested but not broken, and now it becomes something more. Oddly enough, one curious historical detail suggests that appeals for aid on the steppe often relied heavily on personal loyalty rather than formal obligation. Promises made in youth shared hardships, and remembered debts could outweigh political calculations. You see that dynamic unfolding here as Temujin calls upon connections that once seemed uncertain. Some respond, not all, but enough. A small force gathers, not grand or overwhelming, but unified by a shared purpose. You sense the tension among them, the mix of trust and caution, but also something else. Momentum. The wind rises again, carrying with it a sense of movement, of impending action. Temujin stands at the edge of this gathering, his gaze fixed on the horizon. There is no hesitation left in him now. The uncertainty of childhood, the fragility of exile, the testing of early bonds, all of it has led to this moment. He will ride, not just for survival, but for something deeper, something that feels even now like the first true step toward a larger destiny. And as you stand beside him, feeling the ground steady beneath your feet, you realize that the story has shifted once more. No longer shaped only by loss, now driven by resolve. The ground feels different beneath you now, as if it carries a quiet tension that was not there before. The air holds a sharper clarity, every sound more distinct, every movement more deliberate. You sense it in the way the horses shift restlessly, in the way voices stay low but urgent. This is no longer simple survival. This is preparation. Temujin moves among his small gathering of allies, his presence steady, his voice calm but firm. You notice how others listen to him now, not out of habit, but out of choice. That is new and important. The men around him are not bound by blood alone. They are bound by purpose. You watch as they check their gear, adjusting straps, tightening bindings, preparing weapons that are simple but effective. Bows are tested with quiet precision, arrows are counted. Every detail matters, because here even a small mistake can become fatal. The wind hums low, almost like a warning. Records confirm, according to research referenced by the University of California, that steppe warfare relied heavily on mobility and coordination rather than sheer numbers. Small disciplined groups could outmaneuver larger forces if they moved with speed and unity. You begin to understand how such principles are already taking shape in Temujin's approach. He does not rush. That is what stands out most. There is urgency in his purpose, but not recklessness. He listens to his allies, weighs their knowledge, and adjusts his plans accordingly. It is a quiet kind of leadership, one that does not demand attention, but naturally gathers it. They ride at first light. The sky is pale, the sun only beginning to rise, casting long shadows across the land. The sound of hooves builds into a steady rhythm, not loud but constant. You feel it through the ground, a pulse that seems to echo the movement of your own thoughts. The journey is long, longer than it first appears. The steppe stretches endlessly, offering no clear boundaries, no easy markers. Yet Temujin navigates it with growing certainty, guided by memory, by instinct, and by the shared knowledge of those beside him. Along the way, you notice something subtle, the way he treats those who follow him. There is no distance between them, no rigid hierarchy enforced through fear. He speaks with them, not at them. He listens, he adapts. It is not equality in the modern sense, but it is different from what you might expect in this world. And people respond to that. Scholars often disagree on whether this early leadership style was intentional or simply a product of necessity. Some historians, drawing on discussions from Stanford University, suggest that Temujin's emphasis on shared hardship created stronger bonds among his followers. Others argue that such interpretations may project later success backward onto earlier events. The debate remains open, shaped by limited sources and differing perspectives. Still, what you see feels real and effective. A short pause settles, the kind that comes before something important. They reach the territory where Borte is held. You feel the shift immediately. The air tightens, movement slow, voices drop to whispers, then to silence. Every sense sharpens every detail, becoming suddenly significant. Temujin signals to his companions. No words, just a gesture. They spread out, positioning themselves with careful precision. The plan unfolds quietly, each person understanding their role without the need for repeated instruction. It is not perfect, not polished, but it is coordinated, and that makes all the difference. The attack begins, swift, controlled, not chaotic but focused. You hear the sudden burst of motion, the sharp sounds of conflict, the rush of bodies moving through space. It is over quickly, faster than you expect, leaving behind a stunned stillness in its wake. Temujin moves through the aftermath with urgency, not to claim victory, but to find her. He reaches Borte. She is alive. That is all that matters in this moment. Their eyes meet, and though no words are spoken, something passes between them, something that feels stronger than before. Not just relief, but recognition. They have both endured, both changed, and now they stand together again, short, quiet, powerful. Oddly enough, one curious historical note suggests that such rescues, while rare, carried immense significance on the steppe, reinforcing personal loyalty and elevating a leader's reputation among allies. Acts like this were remembered, retold, woven into the fabric of emerging legend. You can almost feel that process beginning here. The group regathers. There is no celebration, only a quiet acknowledgement of what has been achieved and what it means. Temujin stands among them, not elevated above, but clearly at the center of something growing. You notice how others look at him now, not just as a companion, but as a leader worth following. The shift is subtle, but undeniable. The wind rises again, carrying with it a sense of movement that feels larger than this single moment. The steppe stretches outward, vast and waiting, as if offering new challenges, new opportunities, new conflicts yet to come. Temujin looks out across it. His expression is calm, but within that calm there is direction. You feel it. The story is no longer about survival alone. It is about rising. And, as the group begins to move once more, their formation tighter, their purpose clearer, you realize that this rescue was not just an end. It was a beginning, a turning point, one that will echo far beyond this quiet stretch of land. The land feels wider now, though nothing has truly changed. The same winds sweep across the same endless grass, yet your sense of it has shifted. You no longer see only isolation. You begin to notice pathways, invisible lines of movement and connection that stretch between distant groups. Temujin sees them too. He rides with greater assurance, not just across the land, but within it, as if he has begun to understand its hidden structure. The small band that follows him has grown slightly, not dramatically, but enough to feel the difference. More voices, more footsteps, more presence. It is still fragile, but it is no longer small. You watch as they approach another encampment, their pace steady, their formation loose but intentional. There is no rush, no display of force, just a quiet confidence that feels new. The people ahead notice them, of course. They always do. Nothing moves unnoticed on the steppe. The meeting is cautious, measured. Voices remain calm, but every glance carries weight. You sense the calculations happening beneath the surface. Who are these riders? What do they want? Are they worth trusting? Temujin speaks, not loudly, but clearly. He does not rely on grand claims or inherited status. Instead, he offers something different: shared purpose, mutual gain, protection through unity rather than dominance. It is a subtle shift, but you feel its impact. Some listen, others hesitate, a few turn away. Records confirm, as referenced in research from the University of Oxford, that Temujin's early rise was marked by his ability to attract followers beyond traditional clan lines, often incorporating individuals from defeated or rival groups into his ranks. This approach challenged long-standing steppe customs, where loyalty was typically bound to lineage rather than choice. You see that challenge unfold here. A man steps forward from the other group, his expression guarded but thoughtful. He asks questions, testing Temujin's intent, probing for weakness or deception. The exchange is calm but tense, like a rope pulled just tight enough to hold. Temujin does not retreat. He answers directly. There is no attempt to mask uncertainty, no effort to appear invulnerable. Instead, he speaks with a kind of grounded honesty that feels unusual in this environment. And slowly, almost reluctantly, the tension begins to ease. A few join him. Not all, but enough. The group grows again. You notice how this process repeats itself in different places with different people, each time slightly varied, each time building something larger. It is not conquest in the traditional sense. It is accumulation, connection, a weaving together of individuals who might otherwise remain divided. And yet not everyone accepts this shift. Rival leaders watch. You feel their presence even before you see them, like a pressure in the air that signals approaching conflict. They do not share Temujin's vision, or perhaps they do not trust it. Either way, they see him as a threat, because he is, not through force alone, but through change. Scholars continue to debate whether Temujin's leadership style was driven by necessity or by a deeper strategic vision. Some historians, drawing on discussions from Harvard University, argue that his emphasis on merit and loyalty represented a deliberate break from aristocratic traditions. Others suggest that these practices emerged organically from his own experiences of exclusion and hardship. The truth likely lies somewhere between, shaped by both intention and circumstance. What matters is how it unfolds. You arrive at another meeting. This one feels different. The air is heavier, the expressions more guarded, the space between groups slightly wider. Words are exchanged, but they carry less warmth, more edge. You sense the possibility of agreement, but also the risk of collapse. A rival leader steps forward. His presence is strong, his confidence clear. He speaks with authority, rooted in tradition, in lineage, in the old ways that have governed the steppe for generations. His challenge is not loud, but it is unmistakable. Why follow this new path? Why trust this man? The question lingers. Temujin listens. He does not interrupt. When he responds, his tone remains steady, but there is a sharper clarity now, a firmness that was less visible before. He does not dismiss tradition, but he does not submit to it either. Instead, he offers an alternative one that values strength, proven through action, rather than inherited through birth. The exchange stretches, back and forth, measured, careful. Then it ends without resolution. No alliance is formed. No battle begins. Just distance, a line drawn quietly across the steppe, short, unresolved, important. Oddly enough, one curious detail, noted by historians, is that such unresolved encounters often shaped future conflicts more than immediate victories or defeats. The memory of a slight, a disagreement, or a perceived challenge could linger, influencing decisions long after the moment itself had passed. You feel that lingering here. The rival group departs their movements, controlled their silence, heavy. Temujin watches them go, his expression unreadable. But his posture firm. He does not pursue. Not yet. Instead, he turns back to his own followers. They are watching him, waiting. And in that quiet moment, you see it clearly. He is no longer simply gathering people. He is shaping something. A new kind of order, still fragile, still forming, but already distinct from what came before. It is built not on certainty, but on adaptability. Not on fixed hierarchy, but on earned trust. The wind rises again, brushing across your face with a steady, familiar touch. It carries with it the sense of movement, of change, of something still unfolding. Temujin mounts his horse. The group follows, and as they ride forward, their path stretching into the vast distance ahead, you understand that the conflicts to come will not be accidental. They are inevitable, because change once begun rarely stops. The horizon seems sharper today, its line cutting cleanly between earth and sky, as if the world itself has drawn a boundary that cannot be ignored. You feel a quiet tension in the air, not urgent, not chaotic, but steady and persistent, like a thought that refuses to fade. Temujin rides at the front. The group behind him is no longer small enough to overlook. Their numbers have grown, their movements more coordinated, their presence more noticeable. Wherever they pass, people watch, some with curiosity, others with concern, because something is changing, and change is rarely welcomed without resistance. You move with them into a gathering larger than any you have seen before. Clusters of tents spread across the land, smoke rising in soft columns, voices blending into a low, continuous hum. This is not a simple meeting. It is a convergence, a moment where multiple tribes come together, each carrying its own history, its own expectations. The atmosphere feels thick, heavy with possibility, and with risk. Temujin steps forward into this space, his posture calm, his expression steady. He does not appear overwhelmed, though the scale of this moment is undeniable. Around him, leaders of different groups observe carefully, measuring him against their own standards, their own assumptions. Tradition sits heavily here. You can feel it in the way people position themselves, in the deference shown to certain individuals, in the quiet but rigid structures that define who speaks and who listens. These customs have shaped the steppe for generations, creating order in a world that might otherwise dissolve into chaos. And now Temujin challenges them, not loudly, not aggressively, but unmistakably. Records confirm, as noted in research from the University of Cambridge, that one of Temujin's most radical shifts was his reorganization of social structure, breaking traditional clan hierarchies and replacing them with units based on loyalty and merit. This approach disrupted long-standing norms, redistributing power in ways that unsettled established leaders. You see the first clear signs of that shift here. He speaks not of lineage, but of ability, not of inherited rank, but of proven skill. He proposes a system where individuals are grouped and led based on trust and effectiveness, rather than blood ties alone. The reaction is immediate, not loud but visible. Expressions tighten, eyes narrow, subtle glances are exchanged among those who stand to lose influence under such a system. The idea is not dismissed outright, but it is met with resistance that feels deep and instinctive, because it threatens something fundamental. The old order. A leader rises to speak against him. His voice is controlled but firm, carrying the weight of tradition and authority. He questions the practicality of such changes, the risks of abandoning structures that have endured for generations. His words are not without merit, and you feel the tension they create ripple through the gathered crowd. Temujin listens. Again, he does not interrupt. When he responds, there is a new edge to his tone, not harsh but resolute. He does not argue that the old ways are without value. Instead, he points to their limitations, to the divisions they have created, to the conflicts they have failed to prevent. He offers an alternative, unity through choice, strength through cooperation. It is a vision that feels both simple and profound. Scholars continue to debate how revolutionary this moment truly was. Some historians, drawing on discussions from Princeton University, argue that Temujin's restructuring marked a decisive break from tribal fragmentation, laying the foundation for large-scale unification. Others suggest that elements of such organization may have existed earlier, though not as fully realized. So, the debate remains open, shaped by interpretation as much as evidence. What you witness feels like a turning point, not a sudden transformation, but the beginning of one. The gathering does not end with clear agreement. It rarely does. Instead, it dissolves slowly, conversations continuing in smaller groups, decisions forming quietly, rather than through formal declaration. Some leaders remain skeptical, others are intrigued. A few begin to shift their positions cautiously, aligning themselves with this emerging structure. Temujin does not force the outcome. He allows it to unfold. That too is a kind of strategy. Short, patient, effective. Oddly enough, one curious historical detail suggests that such incremental changes often proved more enduring than immediate sweeping reforms, allowing new systems to take root gradually rather than provoking unified opposition. You can sense that gradual shift happening here, subtle but steady. As the gathering disperses, you notice how the composition of Temujin's followers begins to change. It is no longer defined by a single clan or shared ancestry. Instead, It becomes a collection of individuals from different backgrounds drawn together by a shared purpose. The structure forms quietly. Units take shape. Leaders emerge not because of who they are related to, but because of how they perform. Loyalty becomes something earned, reinforced through action, rather than assumed through birth. It is not perfect. There are tensions, misunderstandings, moments of doubt. Old habits do not disappear easily, but the direction is clear. Forward! The wind moves across the steppe, with a steady rhythm carrying the sounds of departing groups. The fading echoes of conversation, the subtle shift of a world beginning to reorganize itself. Temujin stands at the edge of this transformation. He does not look back. And as you remain beside him, feeling the quiet momentum of what has been set in motion, you realize that the steppe itself is beginning to change. Not in its landscape, but in the way people move within it. And that change will not remain contained for long. The steppe feels more connected now, as if invisible threads stretch between distant camps, linking people who once moved in isolation. You begin to sense a quiet network forming, not drawn on any map, but alive in memory, loyalty, and shared purpose. Temujin moves within this network with growing certainty. He no longer travels as a lone figure seeking support. He travels as someone expected, someone whose arrival carries meaning. You notice how camps prepare when word spreads of his approach, how conversations shift in anticipation. This is new, and it is powerful. The group that follows him has changed again. It is no longer a loose gathering of individuals. It has shape, rhythm, and internal structure. You see small units forming each, with its own leader, each connected to the whole, through trust rather than lineage. It feels deliberate, because it is. Records confirm, according to research from Columbia University, that Temujin organized his followers into decimal units groups, structured in tens, hundreds, and thousands, creating a flexible system that allowed for both control and mobility. This innovation helped transform a collection of tribes into a coordinated force. You begin to see the early form of that system here. It is not yet formalized, but the idea is present. People are grouped intentionally. Responsibilities are shared. Leadership is distributed. It creates a sense of order that feels different from the rigid hierarchies of the past. More adaptable, more responsive. Temujin stands among them, not distant but central. He speaks with his followers regularly, learning their strengths, understanding their limits. You notice how he remembers details, small things that others might overlook. A skill, a habit, a quiet loyalty. These things matter to him, and because they matter to him, they begin to matter to everyone else. The wind carries the sound of voices, not tense, not uncertain, but steady. You walk through the camp observing how people interact. There is still caution, still awareness of risk, but also something new. A growing sense of belonging, not tied to blood, but to shared direction. It is fragile, but it is real. A short pause settles, just long enough to feel its significance. Then conflict returns, not as a sudden attack, but as a slow gathering of pressure. Rival groups, those who resisted Temujin's earlier proposals, begin to align against him. You feel their presence like a distant storm, building strength beyond the horizon. Messengers arrive. Their words are careful, but the meaning is clear. Opposition is forming. Not unified, not yet, but enough to create real danger. The old order does not fade quietly, it resists. Temujin listens. He gathers his leaders, those who have proven themselves, through action rather than inheritance. They sit together not in rigid formation, but in a circle that suggests shared responsibility. The discussion is calm, focused. You notice how different voices contribute, how ideas are weighed rather than dismissed. It is not chaos. It is structured but flexible, allowing for adaptation rather than rigid adherence. This is how decisions are made now. Together, scholars often debate whether this collaborative approach was a conscious strategy or an organic development. Some historians referencing discussions from the University of Chicago suggest that Temujin's leadership style encouraged input as a way to strengthen cohesion and trust. Others argue that such methods may have evolved naturally from the diverse backgrounds of his followers. The exact origin remains uncertain, but its impact is key. The decision is made. They will confront the opposition, not recklessly, but decisively. You feel the shift immediately. The quiet rhythm of camp life transforms into preparation. Weapons are checked again. Horses are readied. The air fills with a focused energy, not frantic, but purposeful. Temujin moves through it all with calm precision. He speaks to individuals offering direction, encouragement, sometimes simply presence. You notice how this affects them, how his attention strengthens their resolve. It is not authority imposed from above, but something that flows through the group, connecting each part to the whole. Oddly enough, one curious historical detail suggests that leaders who shared hardships directly with their followers often inspired deeper loyalty than those who remained distant. This pattern appears again and again in accounts of steppe warfare, and you can see it clearly here. The army forms, not vast, but unified. They ride out together, their movement coordinated, their purpose clear. The ground beneath you vibrates with the steady rhythm of hooves, a sound that feels both familiar and newly significant. This is no longer a collection of survivors. It is a force. The opposing group appears across the open land. Their formation larger, more traditional, their banners marking allegiance to the old ways. The distance between the two sides feels charged, as if the air itself holds its breath. Temujin signals. The units respond. Each group moves with intention, not waiting for constant instruction, but acting within a shared understanding. It is fluid, adaptive, responsive to the unfolding moment. The clash comes, not chaotic, but dynamic. You sense the difference immediately. Where the opposing force relies on established patterns, Temujin's followers adjust, shift, respond. They do not hold rigid lines. They move, regroup, press where opportunity appears. It is not easy. It is not clean, but it is effective. The battle resolves. Gradually, then suddenly, the opposing force breaks. Not completely destroyed, but scattered, their cohesion lost. The field settles into a quiet that feels heavy, but decisive. Temujin stands among his followers. There is no celebration, only acknowledgement. They have done more than win. They have proven something, that this new way, this emerging structure built on loyalty and merit can stand against the old order. And as the wind moves once more across the steppe, carrying away the echoes of conflict, you realize that this is not just a victory. It is a confirmation of who he is becoming and of what is still to come. The sky stretches wide above you, clear and pale, as if the world has opened itself in quiet acknowledgement of what has been set in motion. The air feels steady, no longer charged with immediate conflict, yet not entirely at peace. Something larger is gathering, something that feels less like a moment and more like a turning of time itself. You travel with Temujin across the steppe once more, but now the journey feels different. Where once there were scattered camps and uncertain meetings, now there is convergence. Groups move toward a single point, drawn by something shared, something anticipated. You sense it in the way riders appear from different directions, their paths aligning as if guided by an unseen force. A great assembly is forming. You arrive at a vast gathering, unlike anything you have witnessed before. The land is filled with tents, arranged in patterns that reflect both order and tradition. Smoke rises in slow columns, blending into the sky, while the sound of voices creates a low, constant hum that seems to pulse through the ground itself. This is a council, a Kurultai, though no one here pauses to define it. It is simply understood. Leaders, warriors, elders, and followers gather, each carrying their own history, their own expectations. The atmosphere is solemn but not heavy. It feels purposeful, as if everyone present recognizes the importance of what is about to unfold. Temujin stands among them. He is no longer just a rising figure. He is central. You notice how others look at him now, not with curiosity or skepticism, but with recognition. His presence carries weight shaped by the victories, the alliances, the changes he has brought to the steppe. The gathering begins, not with loud declarations, but with quiet order. Individuals take their places, forming a structure that reflects both old customs and emerging shifts. There is respect for tradition here, but also a subtle readiness for something new. Records confirm, as noted in research from the University of Oxford, that around 1206, a major assembly of Mongol leaders formally recognized Temujin as the supreme ruler, granting him the title Genghis Khan. This moment marked the unification of the Mongol tribes under a single authority, transforming a fragmented landscape into a cohesive force. You feel the weight of that moment as it approaches. It does not arrive suddenly. It builds. Voices speak one after another, acknowledging past conflicts, recent changes, and the need for unity. The language is measured deliberate, shaped by both caution and conviction. You sense how each statement adds to the growing momentum, like layers of wind strengthening before a storm. Temujin listens, as always, but now his silence carries a different meaning. It is not the silence of someone waiting to be heard. It is the silence of someone already recognized, allowing others to affirm what has already begun to take shape. A leader steps forward. His voice is clear, carrying across the gathering without strain. He speaks of unity, of strength, of the necessity of a single guiding force in a world that has long been divided. His words are not dramatic, but they resonate, echoing through the assembled crowd. Others follow. Agreement builds, not forced, but chosen. Then the moment comes. Temujin is called forward. You feel the shift immediately, a subtle tightening of attention, a collective focus that settles over the entire gathering. The air seems to still the wind, pausing just enough to allow the moment to stand clearly on its own. He steps into the center, calm, steady, unchanged in appearance, yet entirely transformed in meaning. The title is given, Genghis Khan. It is spoken with clarity, with weight, with recognition of what it represents. Not just a name, but a role, a responsibility, a unification of power that has not existed here before. Short, defining, irreversible. You feel it settle across the gathering, not as a sudden surge, but as a deep, steady acknowledgement. This is not a beginning in the simple sense. It is the culmination of everything that has led to this point, and the start of something far larger. Scholars continue to debate the exact nature of this transformation. Some historians, referencing discussions from Harvard University, emphasize the administrative and military implications of this unification, noting how it enabled coordinated campaigns on an unprecedented scale. Others argue that the symbolic significance of the title itself played an equally important role, reshaping identity and allegiance across the steppe. The debate remains active, reflecting the complexity of the moment. What you witness feels both practical and profound. The structure that has been forming now has a name, a center, a clear direction. Genghis Khan turns to the assembled groups. He speaks. His voice is steady, measured, carrying across the space without force. He does not dwell on past struggles. Instead, he looks forward, outlining a vision that extends beyond individual tribes, beyond old divisions. Unity, order, expansion. The words are simple, their meaning is vast. Oddly enough, one curious historical detail suggests that the rituals surrounding such proclamations often reinforced not just authority, but shared identity, binding diverse groups into a single narrative. You sense that narrative forming here, weaving together different histories into one emerging story. The gathering begins to shift, not dispersing yet, but transforming. Conversations take on a new tone, decisions align with a central authority. Movements become more coordinated. The steppe, once defined by fragmentation, begins to feel unified in a way that is both subtle and profound. Genghis Khan stands at the center of it all, not elevated beyond reach, but undeniably at the core. The wind returns, brushing across your face with a familiar touch, carrying the sounds of this transformation outward across the land. It moves beyond this gathering, beyond what you can see, spreading the news, the change, the new order. And as you stand there feeling the quiet magnitude of what has just occurred, you understand that this moment will echo far beyond the steppe. Because now there is not just a leader, there is an empire waiting to move. The air feels sharper after the gathering, as if the world itself has taken a deeper breath. You move with the newly unified force, and there is a difference you cannot ignore. What once felt like a collection of determined individuals now moves with the cohesion of something designed. This is no longer a loose alliance. This is a machine. Genghis Khan rides at its center, but not as a distant figure issuing commands from afar. He is present, moving among his people, observing, adjusting, refining. You notice how carefully everything is being shaped, how each part fits into a larger structure. Nothing is left to chance. The camps are arranged with intention, each unit placed according to a system that feels both flexible and precise. Groups are no longer defined by family ties, but by function, by reliability, by trust earned through action. You see leaders chosen not for their birth, but for their ability to lead. It changes everything. Records confirm, as discussed in research from the University of Cambridge, that Genghis Khan's military organization relied on strict discipline and a decimal system that divided troops into units of 10, 100,000 and beyond. This structure allowed for remarkable coordination across vast distances, giving the Mongol army an advantage that few could match. You begin to see how that advantage forms. Training becomes constant, not harsh for its own sake, but exacting. Riders practice maneuvers again and again, their movements becoming instinctive. Archers refine their aim, releasing arrows with speed and accuracy that feels almost effortless. Communication is streamlined signals, passed quickly and clearly. There is rhythm in it, a steady, deliberate rhythm. The horses are central to everything. You notice how they are cared for, rotated, managed with precision. Each rider has multiple mounts, allowing for long distances to be covered without exhausting a single animal. It creates a mobility that feels almost unreal, as if the entire force can move faster than the land itself. You feel it when they ride. The ground hums beneath you, a constant, powerful pulse. Short, controlled, relentless. Genghis Khan observes it all. He does not simply command, he refines. When something works, it is reinforced. When something fails, it is corrected without hesitation. There is no space for complacency, no tolerance for disorder. And yet there is also reward. You notice how success is recognized, how those who perform well are elevated, regardless of their origins. It reinforces the system, strengthening loyalty, encouraging effort, creating a sense that advancement is possible for anyone willing to prove themselves. It is a powerful idea, and it spreads quickly. Scholars often debate how innovative this system truly was. Some historians, referencing discussions from Stanford University, argue that while elements of such organization existed in earlier nomadic cultures, Genghis Khan's implementation was uniquely effective in its scale and consistency. Others suggest that the true innovation lay not in the structure itself, but in the discipline with which it was enforced. The debate continues, reflecting the complexity of military evolution. What you see feels both familiar and entirely new. The army begins to move beyond its original territory, not in scattered groups, but as a coordinated force. Their movements are planned, their routes chosen with care, their objectives clear. This is no longer about unifying the steppe. It is about expanding beyond it. You travel with them as they approach the borders of northern China, where settled kingdoms rise in contrast to the open land you have come to know. The landscape changes gradually. The horizon feels closer. The air carries different scents, hints of cultivated fields and distant cities. It feels unfamiliar and significant. Genghis Khan pauses before the first major engagement. You sense the weight of the decision, not because he hesitates, but because of what it represents. This is not a raid, not a small conflict between tribes. This is something larger, something that will test everything that has been built. He gives the order. The army moves. The difference is immediate. Where other forces might advance in rigid lines, this one flows, adapting to terrain, adjusting to resistance, maintaining cohesion without sacrificing flexibility. You notice how units operate independently, yet remain connected, responding to signals with speed and precision. It is almost seamless. Almost, because war is never simple. The first encounters are intense, the clash of different worlds meeting with force and uncertainty. You hear the sounds of conflict, the sharp release of arrows, the movement of horses, the shifting lines of engagement. It is controlled, but not without cost. Genghis Khan remains steady. He watches, he adjusts, he learns. Each engagement becomes a lesson, each outcome shaping the next decision. There is no assumption of superiority, only a constant process of refinement. Oddly enough, one curious historical detail suggests that the Mongol army often incorporated knowledge from conquered or allied peoples, adapting new techniques and technologies into their own system. This openness to learning becomes one of their greatest strengths, allowing them to evolve rapidly in unfamiliar environments. You begin to see that adaptability in action. Siege tactics are studied, defensive structures are analysed, strategies are modified. Nothing is fixed, nothing beyond improvement. The campaign progresses, slowly at first, then with increasing momentum. Cities fall, territories shift. The boundaries of the empire begin to expand beyond the steppe. The scale of it becomes difficult to grasp, not because it is hidden, but because it grows so steadily, so consistently, that each step feels like a continuation rather than a leap. Genghis Khan rides forward, always forward, and as you move with this force feeling, the ground tremble beneath the weight of its movement. You realize that this is no longer a story of formation. It is a story of expansion, of a machine now set in motion, one that will not easily stop. The land begins to change beneath you in ways that feel both subtle and profound. The open steppe, once endless and familiar, gives way to fields shaped by careful hands, to walls that rise where none existed before, to settlements that hold stillness rather than motion. You feel the contrast immediately. This is a different world. Genghis Khan pauses at its edge, not in hesitation, but in recognition. What lies ahead is not simply more territory. It is complexity, it is density, it is a system built over generations, one that does not move with the wind but stands against it. And yet he advances, The Mongol force flows forward, adapting as it goes. You notice how their movements shift in response to the terrain. The wide arcs of open riding narrow into more deliberate paths. Scouts move ahead, gathering information, mapping routes, identifying weaknesses. Nothing is rushed. Everything is observed. Records confirm, as discussed in research from Harvard University, that the Mongol campaigns against northern Chinese states revealed a remarkable ability to adapt to siege warfare, despite originating from a nomadic culture with limited initial experience in attacking fortified cities. This adaptability became a defining feature of their success. You begin to see how that adaptation unfolds. The first fortified city appears in the distance, its walls rising high, solid, unyielding. It feels imposing, almost immovable, a stark contrast to the fluidity of the steppe. You sense the challenge it presents, not just physically, but conceptually. How do you conquer something that does not move? Genghis Khan studies it. He does not rush to attack. Instead, he gathers information, listens to advisors, incorporates knowledge from those who understand such structures. Engineers, captured or allied, begin to play a role, introducing techniques that were once foreign to the Mongol way of war. You notice the shift. It is not immediate, but it is decisive. The siege begins, not with chaos, but with calculation. The Mongol forces position themselves strategically, cutting off supply routes, isolating the city, applying pressure over time rather than seeking instant victory. It is a different kind of battle, one that requires patience as much as strength. Days pass, then more. The rhythm slows, but the tension remains. Inside the city, resistance holds. Outside, the Mongol forces maintain their positions, adjusting tactics, testing defenses, learning with each attempt. You feel the persistence of it, the steady application of effort that does not waver, short, quiet, unyielding. Eventually the balance shifts. The defenses weaken, the city falls, not easily, but inevitably. You feel the weight of that moment not just as a victory, but as a confirmation that the Mongol system can extend beyond the steppe, beyond its origins, into entirely different forms of conflict. And with that confirmation, momentum grows. More cities follow. Some resist fiercely, their walls holding, for longer their defenders determined. Others yield more quickly, recognizing the strength and adaptability of the force they face. Each encounter adds to the growing understanding of how to navigate this new landscape. Genghis Khan continues to refine his approach. He does not rely on a single method. Instead, he adjusts based on circumstance, incorporating new techniques, discarding what does not work, constantly evolving. You see how this flexibility becomes a strength, allowing the Mongol army to remain unpredictable and effective. Scholars often debate the extent to which this success was due to innovation versus adaptation. Some historians, referencing discussions from the University of Chicago, argue that the Mongols' willingness to adopt foreign technologies and expertise was more significant than any original invention. Others suggest that their true advantage lay in how seamlessly they integrated these elements into an already efficient system. The debate continues, reflecting the layered nature of their achievements. What you witness feels like a blend of both: innovation shaped by necessity, adaptation driven by purpose. The campaigns extend deeper into northern China. You travel through landscapes that feel increasingly structured, where roads replace open paths, where agriculture shapes the land, where the density of life creates a different kind of complexity. It is a world that requires new ways of thinking, new strategies, new forms of control. And yet the Mongol force adapts. They move through it with growing confidence, their earlier lessons guiding them, their structure allowing for flexibility. The contrast between their origins and their current actions becomes more pronounced, yet also more integrated. Oddly enough, one curious historical detail suggests that the Mongols often spared skilled artisans and specialists, incorporating them into their expanding system rather than destroying them. This practice not only preserved valuable knowledge, but also strengthened their ability to manage and develop newly conquered regions. You see the beginnings of that policy here. Not everything is taken, some things are preserved, and in that preservation the empire grows not just in size but in capability. The wind feels different now, less dominant, more distant, as if the steppe itself is no longer the center of everything, but part of a larger world that continues to unfold. Genghis Khan rides forward, his gaze steady, his purpose clear. The boundaries that once defined his world have expanded, and with them, his vision. This is no longer a campaign of survival or even unification. It is expansion across worlds. And as you move with him through this changing landscape, you begin to understand that the story is no longer confined to the steppe. It is reaching outward, towards something far greater. The roads beneath you feel firmer now, shaped by countless journeys taken long before your arrival. They do not wander like the steppe paths. They connect. They lead somewhere with intention, and as you move along them, you begin to sense a different kind of power unfolding, one that does not rely only on conquest, but on connection. The world is widening, not just in land, but in movement. Genghis Khan continues forward, yet the pace shifts again. The urgency of battle softens into something more measured, more deliberate. You notice how attention turns not only to what is taken, but to how it is held. Because holding is harder, and more important, caravans begin to appear. At first only a few, traders moving cautiously along routes that once felt uncertain, now testing whether the new order will allow safer passage. Their goods vary. Silk, spices, metals, ideas too, though those are less visible. You watch them pass. Their presence changes everything. Records confirm, as discussed in research from Columbia University, that Mongol control over vast territories helped stabilize sections of the Silk Road, allowing trade to move more freely across Eurasia than in previous fragmented periods. This connectivity facilitated not only commerce, but also cultural and technological exchange. You begin to see that stability forming, not perfectly, but steadily. Genghis Khan's forces do not simply pass through these routes. They begin to protect them. Outposts are established. Patrols move along key paths. The threat of random attack decreases, replaced by a system that, while strict, offers predictability. For traders, predictability is everything. The camps you move through now feel different. There is still movement, still the constant readiness of a mobile society. But there is also an emerging sense of order that extends beyond immediate survival or conquest. Messages travel faster, information spreads more reliably. The empire begins to feel connected, not just expansive. You hear different languages, different accents, different rhythms of speech. The world is no longer isolated into separate fragments. It is beginning to overlap, to blend, to interact in ways that were once rare or difficult. It feels quiet, but profound, short, subtle, transformative. Genghis Khan observes this shift with the same attention he gave to warfare. You notice how systems begin to form around trade, around communication, around movement. It is not chaotic growth, it is structured, guided, shaped. He understands something important. An empire is not only built by taking, it is sustained by connecting. Scholars often debate how intentional this focus on trade and communication truly was. Some historians, referencing discussions from Yale University, argue that the Mongols recognized early the value of secure trade routes as a source of wealth and stability. Others suggest that these systems evolved naturally as a byproduct of territorial expansion rather than through deliberate planning. The debate remains open, reflecting the complexity of cause and effect. What you witness feels purposeful, even if it grows from necessity. Caravans increase, routes become busier. You notice how goods move not just in one direction, but in many linking distant regions into a network that feels alive. The steppe once seen as empty space becomes a bridge, a conduit through which the world begins to flow. Oddly enough, one curious historical detail suggests that under Mongol rule, merchants were often granted special protections and even official passports, allowing them to travel vast distances with reduced risk. This system encouraged trade to flourish, reinforcing the empire's economic strength. You see hints of that protection here. Guards accompany certain groups. Signals are recognized. Authority extends beyond immediate presence, carried through symbols, through reputation, through shared understanding. The Silk Road trembles, not from destruction, but from transformation. Cities that once operated independently now find themselves linked through a larger system. Their markets adjust, their expectations shift. The flow of goods, of people, of ideas becomes more continuous, less interrupted. You feel the scale of it, even if it is difficult to fully grasp. It stretches far beyond what you can see. Genghis Khan rides along one of these routes, his presence both a reminder of power and a signal of stability. Traders watch him pass, some with respect, others with caution, but all aware that his influence shapes the very ground beneath their journeys. The wind carries new scents, spices unfamiliar, smoke from distant lands, hints of places you have not yet seen. The world is opening, and with that opening comes new challenges. Managing such a vast network requires more than strength. It requires systems, communication, trust, and control that can extend across great distances without breaking. You begin to see those systems forming. Messengers ride swiftly between points, carrying information that shapes decisions far from their origin. Local leaders adapt to broader expectations, aligning their actions with the needs of the empire. It is not perfect. There are gaps. There are tensions, but the direction is clear. Forward, always forward. Genghis Khan does not slow. He adjusts. He refines. He expands not just territory but structure. And as you move along these newly vital routes, feeling the steady pulse of trade and communication beneath your feet, you realize that this empire is no longer defined only by conquest. It is defined by connection, a web stretching across continents, quietly reshaping the world. The air grows heavier as you travel westward, carrying with it a sense of tension that feels different from anything before. This is not the quiet uncertainty of early survival, nor the calculated pressure of organized battle. It is something sharper, more immediate, like a spark waiting for dry grass. The empire has expanded far, farther than anyone once imagined, and now it meets another. You move with Genghis Khan's forces toward the lands of the Khwarezmian Empire, a vast and established power stretching across cities, deserts, and trade routes. Its markets are busy, its rulers confident, its borders defined by walls and authority rather than open land. At first there is no war. There is only contact. A caravan is sent. Merchants envoys representatives carrying goods and goodwill, seeking to establish trade, to open pathways between two growing worlds. It feels like a natural step, almost inevitable, given the networks you have seen forming. For a moment it seems possible, peaceful, balanced. Then everything breaks. The caravan does not return. Instead, word comes back slowly, carried by rumour, then confirmed by those who escape. The merchants have been seized, accused, executed. Their goods taken, their purpose ignored. The silence that follows feels sharp, cutting. You sense the shift immediately. This is not just loss. It is insult. Records confirm, as discussed in research from the University of Cambridge, that the execution of Mongol envoys by the Khwarezmian governor triggered one of the most devastating military responses in history. Diplomatic immunity, even in that era, was often respected, and its violation carried serious consequences. Genghis Khan receives the news. He does not react immediately. You watch him expecting anger, expecting sudden action. Instead, there is stillness, a quiet absorption of what has happened, as if he is measuring not just the event, but its implications. Then another message is sent, a demand for explanation, for justice. It is a final attempt, a narrowing path, but it closes quickly. The response is dismissive in a way that feels deliberate. The message returns, and with its certainty, war is no longer a possibility. It is a decision, short, final, unavoidable. You feel the weight of it settle across the army, not as chaos but as focus. Preparation begins immediately, but without panic. This is not a reaction, it is a shift into something already understood. The Mongol forces organize with precision. Scouts move ahead. Routes are mapped. Strategies are formed. This will not be a single battle. It will be a campaign. Genghis Khan divides his forces, not weakening them, but extending them, allowing multiple paths of advance, multiple points of pressure. It is a strategy that feels both bold and controlled, spreading influence while maintaining coordination. Scholars often debate the scale and intent of this campaign. Some historians, referencing discussions from Harvard University, argue that Genghis Khan's response was calculated to eliminate a rival power completely, ensuring long-term security for his empire. Others suggest that the initial objective may have been more limited, escalating only after continued resistance. The debate remains unresolved, shaped by the enormity of what followed. What you witness feels total. The campaign begins. Cities fall one by one, some resisting, others collapsing under the pressure of coordinated attack. The speed is striking the movement relentless. You feel the rhythm of it, the steady advance that does not pause long enough for opposition to fully organize. The land changes again. Deserts stretch outward, their silence deeper, their heat more intense. Rivers cut through the terrain, marking lifelines for the cities that rise along their banks. Each environment presents new challenges, but the Mongol system adapts as it has before. Nothing halts them. Nothing slows them for long. Oddly enough, one curious historical detail suggests that the Mongols often use psychological tactics alongside military force, spreading fear ahead of their advance to weaken resistance before battle even began. You sense that effect here, as news of their approach travels faster than their armies. Cities hear of what has happened elsewhere, and they hesitate. Some surrender, others resist. The outcomes vary, but the pattern continues. Genghis Khan remains at the center of it all, directing movements, adjusting plans, maintaining the flow of the campaign. He does not appear consumed by anger, though the origin of this war lies in insult. Instead, his focus remains clear, almost detached, as if he sees the larger shape of what is unfolding. This is not just revenge, it is transformation. The Khwarezmian Empire begins to fracture under the pressure. Its unity breaks its defences, falter, its leadership struggles to respond to a force that moves faster and adapts more fluidly than expected. You feel the scale of it. It stretches beyond individual battles, beyond single victories or losses. It becomes a sweeping change, reshaping the balance of power across an entire region. The wind carries dust across the landscape, softening the edges of what you see, as if even the land itself is adjusting to the shift. The sky remains vast, unchanged, yet everything beneath it is moving, transforming, unfolding. Genghis Khan rides forward, always forward, And as you follow feeling the steady momentum of a campaign that seems to expand with each passing day, you realize that this moment, born from a single act of violence against a caravan, has become something far greater, a turning point, one that will leave its mark across history. The wind feels quieter now, as if it has learned to move around the weight of what has already happened. You travel through lands that no longer resist in the same way. The great storm of conquest has passed through, leaving behind something that is not quite calm, but no longer chaotic. The empire stretches far, far beyond the steppe, and now comes a different challenge. Holding it together, Genghis Khan moves through these newly conquered regions with a focus that feels less urgent, but no less intense. The rhythm of war gives way to the rhythm of control, of structure, of decision. You notice how attention shifts from movement to stability, because expansion alone is not enough. Without order, it dissolves. Records confirm, as discussed in research from Yale University, that Genghis Khan implemented administrative systems that allowed diverse regions to function under a unified framework, often preserving local customs while imposing overarching authority. This balance helped maintain control across vast and varied territories. You begin to see how that balance forms. Local leaders are not always removed. Sometimes they remain, but their role changes. They answer to a larger system now, one that expects loyalty, consistency, and contribution. You notice how this approach reduces resistance, allowing existing structures to support the new order rather than oppose it. It is practical and effective. Genghis Khan does not attempt to make every place the same. Instead, he allows differences to remain as long as they do not threaten the stability of the empire. Laws are introduced, but they are broad, designed to unify rather than erase. Taxes are collected, but with attention to sustainability rather than immediate gain. It feels measured, deliberate. You walk through a city that has recently come under Mongol control. The markets are open again, though quieter than before. People move with caution, adjusting to new authority, testing the boundaries of what has changed and what has not. Guards are present, not oppressive, but visible. A reminder, short, clear, constant. Genghis Khan meets with local officials. You watch the exchange closely. There is no unnecessary display of dominance, no effort to overwhelm. Instead, there is clarity. Expectations are set, agreements are formed, consequences are understood. It is direct, without excess. This approach spreads across cities, across regions. A pattern emerges, one that allows the empire to function, despite its vast size. Communication becomes essential, and systems are strengthened to support it. Messengers ride between distant points, carrying orders, updates information that keeps everything connected. You begin to understand how control is maintained, not through constant force, but through structure. Scholars often debate the extent to which this administrative system was centralized or flexible. Some historians, referencing discussions from the University of Chicago, argue that the Mongol Empire relied heavily on local governance under a broader imperial framework. Others suggest that key decisions remained tightly controlled from the center, ensuring consistency across regions. The debate reflects the complexity of managing such a vast domain. What you see feels like a blend: control at the top, flexibility below. It allows the system to adapt, to endure. Oddly enough, one curious historical detail suggests that the Mongols often promoted individuals based on ability rather than origin, even within conquered territories. Skilled administrators, regardless of background, could rise within the system, contributing to its effectiveness. You notice that pattern here. A local official, once part of the previous regime, now works within the new structure, his role adjusted but not erased. His knowledge of the region becomes an asset rather than a liability. It strengthens the whole. Genghis Khan continues to move, not staying in one place for long. His presence reinforces authority, but the systems he has established allow governance to continue even in his absence. That is the true measure of control. When the leader is not required for every decision, the empire breathes, steady, sustained. You travel through different regions, each with its own character, its own rhythm. Some are dense with population, others more open. Some accept the new order quickly, others take time to adjust. But across all of them, the same structure begins to take hold. It connects them, holds them, defines them as part of something larger. The wind carries fewer signs of conflict now, and more signs of movements of trade of communication. The chaos of conquest has given way to the complexity of governance. Genghis Khan rides forward, his focus unchanged, but his role expanded. He is no longer just a conqueror. He is a ruler, and as you move with him through this evolving empire, you realize that the true test is not in what has been taken, but in what can be maintained, what can endure, what can grow. The land stretches outward, vast and varied, yet increasingly connected under a single authority, and that authority continues to shape it. Quietly, relentlessly, the rhythm of the empire settles into something quieter now, though no less powerful. You feel it not in sudden movement, but in the steady flow of daily life across vast distances. The chaos of conquest has softened into structure, into expectation, into something that resembles order. You walk through a camp at dusk. The air carries the faint scent of smoke and leather, familiar, yet layered now with traces of distant lands. Voices murmur in different tones, different accents, yet they share a common understanding. There are rules here, not spoken loudly, but known. Genghis Khan stands at the center of this evolving system, shaping not only how people move, but how they behave. You notice how his attention turns towards something less visible than armies or territory. Law, not the kind written in thick books, but a framework carried in memory, reinforced through practice, understood through consequence. It is called the yasa. You do not hear it announced in a single moment. Instead, you feel it emerge piece by piece, as expectations become consistent, as actions are judged against a shared standard. Records confirm, as discussed in research from Princeton University, that Genghis Khan established a body of laws known as the yasa, which governed everything from military discipline to social conduct. Though not preserved in a single complete text, its influence is widely acknowledged in historical accounts. You begin to notice its presence everywhere, in the way disputes are handled, in the way loyalty is enforced, in the way responsibilities are assigned and fulfilled. It creates predictability, and in a world that once relied on shifting alliances and uncertain trust, predictability becomes a powerful force. Short, quiet, binding. A dispute arises between two men, not violent but tense. You watch as it is brought before a leader, not for immediate punishment, but for resolution. The process is direct, efficient, focused on restoring balance rather than prolonging conflict. There is no room for endless argument, no tolerance for disruption that weakens the whole. The decision is made, accepted. The matter ends. You feel the clarity of it, the way it prevents small fractures from growing into larger divisions. It is not softness, it is control applied with purpose. Genghis Khan moves through these moments with awareness, reinforcing the system, not through constant intervention, but through presence and consistency. His authority is felt even when he does not speak, and because of that, the system holds. Scholars often debate how formalized the yasa truly was. Some historians, referencing discussions from the University of Oxford, argue that it functioned more as a set of guiding principles than a fixed legal code adapting to circumstances rather than remaining rigid. Others suggest that its enforcement was strict enough to create a stable and predictable environment across the empire. The debate continues, reflecting the challenge of reconstructing a system that was largely transmitted orally. What you witness feels both structured and flexible, firm where it must be, adaptable where it can be. It extends beyond the military, into daily life. You notice how certain behaviors are encouraged, others discouraged. Theft is punished. Loyalty is rewarded. Obedience to command is expected, not as a burden but as a necessity for cohesion. Even small actions matter, because they reflect the larger order. Oddly enough, one curious historical detail suggests that the Yasa included provisions for religious tolerance, allowing diverse beliefs to coexist within the empire, as long as they did not disrupt unity. This approach contributed to stability across regions with different traditions. You see that tolerance in practice. Different rituals, different customs, yet all operating within the same overarching framework. It creates a sense of inclusion without losing control. A balance that feels deliberate. Genghis Khan understands that an empire cannot rely solely on force. It must also rely on agreement, on shared expectations that allow people to function together despite their differences. The Yasa provides that foundation. You travel through another region, observing how the same principles apply, even in places far from the center. The consistency is striking. It suggests a system that has taken root, one that no longer depends entirely on proximity to power. It sustains itself through understanding, through repetition, through consequence. The wind moves gently across the land, carrying the quiet sounds of an empire at work. Not the clash of battle, but the steady hum of life shaped by structure. Genghis Khan rides forward his role, now deeply tied to this invisible framework. His influence extends beyond what can be seen, embedded in the behaviors, the decisions, the expectations of those who live under his rule. You feel the weight of it, not heavy, but constant. And as you continue alongside him, observing how this system binds together a vast and varied world, you begin to understand that power is not only in what is conquered, it is in what is maintained, what is guided, what is made to endure. The empire holds, not by chance, but by design. The nights feel quieter now, though, not empty. There is a different kind of sound that settles across the empire, one made not of battle, but of distance. Messages travelling, decisions forming, lives unfolding far from the centre, yet still connected to it. You sit near a fire again. It reminds you of the beginning, but everything has changed. Genghis Khan's presence is steady, yet his focus has begun to shift inward. Not away from the empire, but deeper into it. You notice how conversations around him take on a more personal tone, less about immediate campaigns and more about what comes next. Because even the strongest structures must face one quiet question. What happens after? His family surrounds him more often now. His sons, each different, each carrying something of him, yet shaped by their own experiences, their own ambitions. You observe them carefully, sensing the subtle tensions that move between them, rarely spoken but always present. This is not simple. Power rarely is. Records confirm, as discussed in research from the University of Chicago, that Genghis Khan faced ongoing challenges in determining succession among his sons, each of whom held significant influence within different parts of the empire. These internal dynamics would later shape the course of Mongol expansion. You begin to see those dynamics unfold. One son speaks with confidence, his voice steady, his perspective focused on expansion and strength. Another is more reserved, measured, concerned with stability and governance. A third carries intensity, but also unpredictability, his presence adding a layer of uncertainty to every discussion. They are united, but not identical, and that difference matters. Genghis Khan listens to them, much as he has always listened to others. But there is a new weight to these conversations. They are not about immediate decisions, but about the future, about continuity, about the shape of the empire beyond his direct control. The fire crackles softly. The light flickers, short, quiet, heavy. A disagreement arises, not loud, but firm. One son challenges another, their words controlled but edged with tension. It is not personal in the simple sense. It is about direction, about priorities, about what the empire should become. Genghis Khan does not silence them. He allows the discussion to continue. He watches. He measures. Scholars often debate how effectively Genghis Khan managed these internal tensions. Some historians, referencing discussions from Harvard University, argue that his ability to maintain unity among his sons was one of his greatest achievements, preventing early fragmentation. Others suggest that underlying rivalries were never fully resolved, only contained during his lifetime. The debate reflects the complexity of leadership within a family tied to power. What you witness feels like balance, maintained but fragile. The conversation ends without full agreement. It often does, but it does not break. That is the difference. Genghis Khan speaks, then his voice calm, carrying the authority that has been built over years of action rather than declared through title alone. He does not impose a single answer. Instead, he reinforces the principles that have guided him. Unity, loyalty, strength through cooperation. The same ideas that shaped the beginning now guide the future. Oddly enough, one curious historical detail suggests that Genghis Khan designated a specific heir among his sons while still distributing authority among them, creating a system that balanced central leadership with shared responsibility. This approach aimed to preserve unity while acknowledging the strengths of each individual. You begin to understand how that balance is maintained, not through eliminating tension, but through managing it, allowing differences to exist without allowing them to divide the whole. The empire continues to function, its systems strong enough to hold even as these internal questions take shape. Messages still move, trade still flows, governance continues. But beneath it all, there is a quiet awareness. Time is moving. Genghis Khan rides again, but his journeys feel different now. Less about expansion, more about reinforcement, about ensuring that what has been built can endure. You travel with him across regions that now feel familiar, yet each carries its own variations, its own expressions of the larger system. Everywhere you see the same structure, the same principles, the same quiet order, and everywhere you sense the same question: what comes next? The wind moves gently, carrying the faint sounds of distant camps, distant lives, all connected to this central figure who now considers not only the present but the future. His sons ride with him, not always together, but always within reach of his influence. And as you sit once more beneath the wide sky, watching the fire burn low, you realize that the empire, vast as it is, rests not only on systems and strength, but on succession, on continuity, on the fragile balance between unity and division, a balance that must hold, or everything changes. The wind feels older now, carrying with it a sense of distance that stretches beyond land and time. You travel once more across the vast reaches of the empire, yet the movement feels slower, more deliberate, not because the world has changed, but because the man at its center has. Genghis Khan rides, but not as before. There is still strength in his posture, still clarity in his gaze, yet something quieter has entered his presence, a weight that is not weakness, but awareness. You sense it in the pauses, in the moments where he looks farther than the horizon, as if measuring not distance but time. The empire continues to expand. Even now, Messages arrive, reports of distant campaigns of lands brought under control of resistance overcome. The machinery he created moves forward, sustained by the systems he built, by the leaders he shaped. But he feels the strain, not openly, not spoken, just there. You move with him toward another campaign, one that takes you into lands that feel distant, even from what you have already seen. The terrain shifts again, rising into uneven ground, broken by ridges and valleys that interrupt the smooth flow of the steppe. It is unfamiliar and demanding. Records confirm, as discussed in research from the University of Oxford, that Genghis Khan continued to lead campaigns into his later years, including the final expedition against the Western Shia kingdom. These campaigns demonstrated both his enduring ambition and the physical demands placed upon him. You begin to understand those demands. The journey is longer, the terrain less forgiving, the movement slower, yet the purpose remains. Genghis Khan does not retreat from it. He presses forward. The army follows, still disciplined, still coordinated, but you notice the subtle changes. The pauses between movements are slightly longer, the adjustments more frequent. It is not weakness, but the reality of time. Short, inevitable, human. The campaign unfolds with the same structure you have come to recognize. Scouts move ahead, strategies are formed, engagements occur with precision and control. The system still works, because it was built to endure. But now you see the man within the system more clearly. There are moments when he dismounts more slowly, moments when he sits longer than before, moments when his gaze lingers, not on immediate action, but on something beyond it. Scholars often debate the exact circumstances of Genghis Khan's final campaign and his physical condition during it. Some historians referencing discussions from Stanford University suggest that age and accumulated injuries may have begun to limit his direct involvement. Others argue that he remained actively engaged until the very end. The debate reflects the scarcity of precise records from this period. What you witness feels like both presence and change. The campaign continues. Victories are achieved. Resistance is overcome. The empire expands further still. But beneath it all, there is a quiet awareness that this phase is different from what came before. Not because of failure, but because of completion. Genghis Khan has built something vast, something enduring, and now he moves within it with a different kind of focus. You sit with him one evening as the camp settles into silence. The fire burns low, its light steady but soft. Around you, the sounds of the army fade into the background, leaving only the quiet rhythm of breath and distant wind. He looks out across the land, not as a conqueror measuring what can be taken, but as a ruler considering what has been made. Oddly enough, one curious historical detail suggests that despite his immense power, Genghis Khan maintained a relatively simple personal lifestyle, reflecting the nomadic traditions of his upbringing. This simplicity contrasts with the scale of the empire he created, grounding him even as his influence expanded. You see that simplicity here, in the way he sits, in the absence of excess, in the quiet presence of a man who has shaped history, yet remains connected to the land that formed him. The wind moves gently, the stars appear, time passes, and as you remain beside him feeling the stillness of this moment, you understand that this campaign is not just another step forward. It is the closing of something, not the empire, but his role within it. The next day the army moves again. Forward, always forward. But now the movement carries a different meaning. Not just expansion, but transition, a passing of something that cannot remain unchanged. And as you follow, aware of the quiet shift that continues to unfold, you realize that the story is approaching a moment that will reshape everything once more. Not through battle, but through absence. The air feels unusually still, as if the world itself has softened its movement in quiet recognition of what is about to happen. You remain within the camp, yet everything seems slightly distant, like sound muffled beneath layers of thought and time. The campaign continues around you. Orders are given. Horses move, fires burn. But at the center, something has changed. Genghis Khan no longer rides at the same pace. You notice it in the way others adjust around him, how their attention lingers, how their movements become more careful, more aware. Nothing is said directly, yet everyone senses it. Time has reached him. Not suddenly, but inevitably. He rests more often now, his presence still commanding, but quieter. The force of his will remains, yet it no longer drives every moment with the same relentless motion. Instead, there is a pause between actions, a space where reflection seems to settle. You sit near him once more. The fire burns low, its warmth steady, its light soft, short, gentle, fading. Records confirm, as discussed in research from Harvard University, that Genghis Khan died in 1227 during his final campaign, though the exact cause remains uncertain. Accounts vary, some suggesting illness, others injury, and still others leaving the details deliberately unclear. That uncertainty lingers here. You do not witness a single defining moment, no dramatic event, no clear line between before and after. Instead, it unfolds quietly, gradually, like the fading of a distant sound. Genghis Khan speaks less, but when he does, his words carry the same clarity, the same directness that shaped everything before. He gives instructions, ensures continuity, reinforces the structures that will remain once he is gone. Because he knows the empire must endure beyond him. His sons are near, their presence is steady, though the tension you once felt among them has softened into something more focused. This moment does not allow for division, not yet, not here. They listen, carefully. Each word matters. Scholars often debate how prepared the empire was for his passing. Some historians, referencing discussions from the University of Cambridge, argue that Genghis Khan's prior arrangements for succession helped maintain stability in the immediate aftermath. Others suggest that underlying tensions would inevitably surface once his unifying presence was gone. The debate reflects the balance between preparation and human nature. What you witness feels like preparation, but also uncertainty. The camp grows quieter, not silent, but subdued, as if every movement carries awareness of what is coming. You notice how the usual rhythms continue, yet they feel different, less automatic, more deliberate. People speak in lower tones, movements slow slightly, attention turns inward. The wind barely stirs, a rare stillness. Genghis Khan lies within his shelter. You do not see him constantly now, but you feel his presence. Even in absence, messages pass in and out, quiet, controlled, ensuring that the system continues to function. The empire does not stop. It cannot stop. That is part of what he has built. Continuity. Even here, oddly enough, one curious historical detail suggests that the location of Genghis Khan's burial was kept secret, with efforts made to ensure that no permanent marker revealed it. This secrecy has preserved a sense of mystery that endures to this day. You sense that secrecy beginning already, the way information is managed, the way details are held back, the way the moment is contained. Then it happens, not with a sound, not with a signal, but with a quiet absence. He is gone. The shift is immediate, though. Nothing outwardly changes at first. The fires still burn, the horses still move, the army still breathes in its steady rhythm. But something central is no longer there. Short, final, irreplaceable. The news spreads carefully, not in a rush but in a controlled flow. Leaders are informed, decisions are made, actions are taken to ensure stability, to prevent disruption, to maintain the structure that has been built. There is no chaos, no collapse, because he prepared for this, and yet the weight of it settles across everything. You feel it in the silence between words, in the pauses between movements, in the way people look at one another, aware that something immense has ended. His sons take their roles, not as replacements, but as continuations. The empire moves forward, because it must, but it does so now without the singular presence that shaped it from the beginning. You step back slightly, observing the camp, the army, the vast system that continues to function. It is remarkable the way it holds together, the way it absorbs this loss without breaking. But it is not unchanged. It cannot be. The wind begins to move again, softly at first then, with growing strength, as if the world itself resumes its motion after a brief pause. And as you stand there feeling the quiet magnitude of this moment, you understand that while Genghis Khan is gone, what he created remains. Moving, expanding, enduring, but forever marked by his absence. The wind returns with a softer voice now, no longer sharp with urgency, but steady and reflective, as if carrying memories instead of warnings. You move through the vast expanse of the empire once more, yet everything feels different. Not broken, not lost, but changed. Genghis Khan is gone, yet his presence lingers everywhere. You notice it in the structure of camps, in the rhythm of movement, in the expectations that guide daily life across distances too large to fully grasp. The empire continues, and it grows. His sons take command of different regions, extending the reach of what he began. Armies move further west, deeper into lands that once seemed impossibly distant. Trade routes remain active, carrying goods and ideas across continents, linking cultures that had rarely touched before. The world is no longer divided in the same way. It is connected. Records confirm, as discussed in research from Stanford University, that the Mongol Empire became the largest contiguous land empire in history, stretching across Asia and into Europe, facilitating exchanges that reshaped economies, technologies, and cultures. You feel that scale now, not as numbers, but as presence. Everywhere you go, there are signs of it. Different languages spoken under shared authority. Different customs practiced within a common structure. Different lives, all connected through the system he built. It is vast, almost beyond comprehension. Short, expansive, enduring. You travel along a trade route once more, watching caravans move with a confidence that would have been impossible before. Goods flow steadily. Information travels quickly. The empire acts as a bridge linking worlds that once stood apart. And yet not everything is simple. There are tensions. There are divisions. The unity he maintained does not remain unchanged. His sons, though capable, do not share his singular authority. Differences emerge, sometimes subtle, sometimes more pronounced. Scholars often debate the long-term stability of the empire after his death. Some historians, referencing discussions from the University of Oxford, argue that while the empire continued to expand, internal divisions eventually led to fragmentation into separate khanates. Others emphasize the enduring influence of Mongol systems, noting how their administrative and trade networks continued to shape global interactions long after political unity faded. The debate reflects a truth you can feel. Continuity and change exist together. The empire evolves. It does not remain fixed. Oddly enough, one curious historical detail suggests that the Pax Mongolica, a period of relative stability across the empire, allowed for unprecedented levels of cultural exchange, including the spread of technologies, ideas, and even medical knowledge across vast distances. You see that exchange in motion. A traveller from one region meets another from far away, sharing stories, goods, perspectives. Knowledge moves not confined by borders, but carried along the networks that now span continents. It feels quiet, but powerful. You pause at the edge of the steppe once more, the same vast land where this story began. The wind moves across it, familiar and unchanged, yet now connected to a world far larger than it once was. You remember the small camp, the fragile beginnings, the child who sat beside a fire with no certainty of what would come. And now you see what came: an empire, a transformation, a legacy that reaches far beyond a single lifetime. Genghis Khan's influence remains not as a single moment, but as a continuous presence, embedded in systems and connections in the very structure of how distant places interact. He is gone, but not absent. His story continues in everything that follows. You feel a sense of stillness settle in, not empty, but complete, as if the journey has reached a place where reflection becomes possible. The movement slows, the details soften, and the vastness of what you have witnessed begins to settle into something quieter. The wind carries one last breath across the land, and then gently it fades. You remain there for a moment longer, aware that this story, though finished in one sense, continues in countless others, stretching forward through time, in ways both visible and unseen. And now, as the night deepens and the world grows calm around you, it is time to rest. If this journey across the life and legacy of Genghis Khan stayed with you, I would love to hear what moment lingered most in your mind. Was it the quiet struggle of his childhood, the rise through unity, or the vast empire that reshaped the world? Share your thoughts in the comments and tell me where you are listening from tonight. There is something special about connecting across distance, just as this story has shown. And if you found peace, curiosity, or even a sense of wonder here, consider exploring the next story waiting for you on this channel. There are many more journeys through history, each one carrying you gently into another time, another world. Rest well, and I will see you in the next story. Blessings to you and your family.